So ICP heads that come on here every day.
I had the opportunity to visit our troops fighting in Operation Epic Fury. We were on the ground, in CENTCOM on Saturday for about half the day.
And he giving some, patent style speech that's clearly been written out of a war novel to people, destroying everything and mission accomplished, mission accomplished, mission accomplished. The war is over. But as a citizen, what I want to know is how much is this costing me? Because I see kids that are uneducated. I see the entire education department falling apart. I see healthcare insurance that is not being provided for over 2 million people that got kicked off of Medicaid. I see STAT benefits going away. I see how the SSI is making it much harder for people, to get their just due for working their entire lives for what they are owed, for what they took. I see organizations like Doge that have been ripping off people that have been lifelong government employees, stealing their benefits, stealing their jobs, and no accountability. I see them putting out information that they gain by illegal means for other people to use. Your social security numbers, your private information, off of what was supposed to be in government secured servers. What is this costing you? That's what you want to know. Here it is.
$10,300 every single second.
$10,300 per second. U.S. war on Iran is costing you, the American consumer, $10,300 per second, collectively.
That's not the GDP of a small country. That's not a Wall Street bonus. That's how fast American taxpayers are bleeding money in the US war on Iran. Every second that you're watching this, you're losing over $10,000. This war has gone on for 31 days. The cost per second is $10,300. That makes the cost per hour $37 million. And the cost per day, a whopping $890 million. So far, the United States has spent over $27 billion. $27 billion. So where is all of this money going? The biggest item is missiles and munitions. From Tomahawk cruise missiles to precision bombs, they cost $320 million a day. So Americans, every time you watch a $1 million firework go off over the Persian Gulf, remember, you paid for it.
That's my point. Remember, you paid for it. These are nothing but your hard-earned tax dollars. Why don't the White House give reports like this? Full transparency of your money. They talk about everything else except your money. Now let's get a little bit deeper into it.
Next is air operations. Fighter jets screaming off carrier decks, bomber runs, aerial refueling missions at 30,000 feet.
Aerial refueling missions at 13,000 feet, which is how I believe 3 Ohio airmen got killed in this war because of an accident that happened during refueling mission. $245 million a day. Fighter sorters, bomber runs, aerial refueling, and reconnaissance. $245 million a day.
Reconnaissance, all of it running round the clock. That costs around $245 million a day. And then there's the Navy, carrier strike groups, destroyers, submarines. These aren't cheap to park in the Arabian Sea. So those account for 155 million a day. Missile defense is costly too, from the THAAD to the Patriot batteries and the Aegis system. That costs $95 million a day. Intelligence and cyber operations cost around 45 million.
Now, the one that she just named, those missile defense systems, she probably did not count the amount of money it costs to bring them from South Korea. Because we moved 6 THAAD systems from South Korea that's supposed to be protecting South Korea, which they agreed to have there in order for trade. And now half their defense missile system is gone. North Korea right next door with an actual nuclear bomb.
I'm talking about satellites, surveillance drones, and digital warfare. And finally, the people actually doing all of this, from troops, supply chains to logistics, they cost around 30 million a day. That's your daily breakdown. $890 million every single day.
Man, that's the reality of this. 890, almost $1 billion a day. And I'm quite sure if you add everything up with logistics and gas and all of that, of the things that are not listed here, because there are a lot of other things, satellites, all kind of stuff. So I know that it's probably up to $1 billion a day. That's what most analysts say. But this is a very thorough breakdown. Not once have you ever heard the White House tell you this. Because they don't want you to pay attention to the money. So if you pay attention to the money, you'll pay attention to the investments. If you pay attention to the investments, you'll pay attention to the legislation that these investors get information from so they can manipulate the market. Everything's a win when you're in the Wall Street game. Everything is a win if you know what's going to happen before it happens. That's why Trump, his sons, and many other people in his cabinet are invested in military defense programs, right? Palantir, NVIDIA, the chips, all of that goes hand in hand. The only way to make money is through Wall Street, because the actual businesses, as I already showed you, of AI is just a circular slush fund, going from big corporation to big corporation. Google, to NVIDIA, to Palantir, to Amazon, round and round and round, because they're not making as much money as you think. What they are doing is gathering investment money. And then they can say, oh, went belly up. Sorry about your luck. That's my video for today. If you'd like to check out Vantage, that is on First Post. They have over 9 million subscribers. And mostly they have, reports that are out of India. But when they do something on America, it's usually correct and accurate with no bias, just the news. I'm just saying. So this is something that I don't normally do, but I'm just going to do a montage of all the top stories that's going on today. This is a story about AI and how they are perpetually lying to us about these data centers. Take a listen.
In future laser tag arenas, it's ridiculous. Absorption is the only number that matters, though, because when you hear under construction can mean literally everything from a single steel beam to a near complete building. And these companies, they like to mislead people. You saw it with Stargate Abilene in particular. They'll say it's come online. When they say it's come online, click through to the article and make sure they're not just talking about one bit of it coming online, because that's always the case. So,
and that is so true. I live in Ohio, and currently they have been building the Intel Mega Center for about 4 years now. It was supposed to be complete in 2021. There's still no end in sight. But wait, there's more.
Absorption is the only real measure of AI build out. You hear an announcement of a data center, think 2 or 3 or 4 years in the future, because I can't find a single data center project announced last year or even in 2024 that appears to have been finished.
Even if everything was on time, what about the power? Because you mentioned it a second ago that about 60% of the data centers that are being built don't even really have a power source for them ready. So that's not just that they've basically just connected the wires up, but there's nothing.
That is so true. Because I've been paying attention. And I've been hearing that small modular reactors were going to be the next big thing for these data centers. However, there isn't really a viable company that is producing them en masse to keep up with, and also you have, regulations. So we're trying to figure out, everybody is assuming that all these data centers have power. Now you have to take in considerations the sources of power, the sources of water. See, there's all these things that need to be worked out, but they got the money to build it first. Take a listen.
To even turn them on.
And it's a bit worse than that as well, because and all of these articles about power have such weasel wording. Long story short, 60% of the data centers just don't have an answer for where the power is coming from. That does not mean that the 40% actually has power. It just means that they've signed contracts with power suppliers theoretically. 60% of them are just like, yeah, we're going to build it. We'll work out the power later. Yeehaw. We don't need to bother. We don't need to worry about these things. You've got a lot of people claiming they're also going to do behind the meter, which is just their own power. And let me tell you, if I was building something right now and I was using liquefied natural gas, I'd be a little bit concerned that I think Saudi Arabia called force majeure, just saying that they can't supply people. It will take 3 to 5 years to restore the availability of natural gas to where it was before the war in Iran. So yeah, just good luck to those guys.
Now that is some of the cheapest LNG power there is. But they destroyed the plant, and it's going to take a long time to rebuild that. And they provided a lot to the Asian countries, to the European countries. It's one of the biggest resources of liquefied gas. So we're in a conundrum right now. All these places that are halfway built and things like that don't have a power source.
Nevertheless, that 60% is an insane figure. It's just like a bunch of people that are like, yeah, we'll work it out in the future. How? Where? Like, what do you mean? Power is so like these data centers are not getting built even before the power issues. You get to this point where when you really think about it, none of this is real. Like they're talking about they can't build the data centers, they don't have the power. When asked about the power, they're just like, nah, yeah, we'll work it out, mate. It'll be sometime in the future. But they're not working it out. The power is not getting built to even like 10% of what's necessary. And even if it does come online, that doesn't mean the power's getting to the data center.
Did some maths recently that for a gigawatt of power, if you were to just build a solar farm next to your data center, it would be about somewhere between 7 and 10 square miles, which is massive. You'd need, I think, Manhattan to produce about 2 gigawatts.
Mm-hmm.
So if we think about the time it's going to take to build all of these things and the power question, which is just there, what's happening to all of the insane amounts of GPUs, which are just kind of waiting, I presume?
So we've had a lot of developments in the Charlie Kirk case. I don't usually cover this because I did it 24 hours after Charlie Kirk was dead. I seen everything that was happening. I knew that the CIA, forensics teams was not available, that Cash Patel was flying around on the jet and they couldn't get there in time. And by the time they did get there, Cash Patel had already accused 3 people and he said it was a wrap. And he did not give any permission to do any foreign investigation. So we know that everything they said up to this point has no proof. We have no proof that he was on the roof. We have no proof that it is even the gun that was used. We have no proof that the dogs even did any kind of, alert for any kind of gun residue on the gun or on Tyler himself. We know that Tyler did not just turn himself in. He was coerced into turning him in because the gentleman told him they were coming to kill him. If they have to break down this door to come get you, they gonna kill you. That's what they told him. We have no admission of the truth, and we have the fact that everyone has been playing games with the evidence and will not allow the defense to have a fair chance to review the evidence. If you give them 20,000, files, and then from September of last year till March 12th this year, and then all of a sudden drop 600,000 files on them and say, yeah, you got to hurry up. We're going to court next month. They did that on purpose. We don't have any evidence of DNA proof of the 7 different fingerprints that are all over the gun. We don't even have a picture of the gun. We don't know how the gun got there. We don't know why the dog did not find the gun. So it's very suspicious that the sheriff in charge of the initial investigation quit on the day the information comes out. The bullet cannot be identified to that gun. We told you that within 24 hours. Every gun expert on the planet said it. There's no way that was a 30-06 bullet. They don't fragment. They don't change directions and go down from one spine down. They go right through. Now we're finding out that, Andrew and Erica Kirk may have been in an illicit relationship, and that was the reason why, Charlie and Erica were not together during those last hours before he left. That's what the word is. So we know that Erica has been lying about where she was right before Charlie Kirk got killed and the events leading up to her, missing the initial coroner's report, and they had to do it by conference call. So it was at a secret location, her and Andrew, which they claimed they were, the story just didn't add up. Her travel plans, 2 days missing afterwards. Like, it was just really, really weird. Everything about her story. You can watch the full episode of Candace, but I just want to touch on a few, evidentiary things.
Here is actually the craziest part of the filing that I don't think anybody noticed. Okay, everybody's talking about the ATF, but the devil is always in the details. The feds are always in the details, okay? Now, I'm going to read this. Regarding the firearm evidence, the defense has been provided with an ATF summary. Again, just a summary report, which indicates that the ATF was unable to identify the bullet recovered at autopsy to the rifle allegedly tied to Mr. Robinson. Although the state has not indicated an intent to produce this report at the preliminary hearing, the defense may very well decide to offer the testimony of the ATF firearm analyst as exculpatory evidence. Okay, so they met, they conferred, and they're like, okay, we haven't even received, we got a summary that this is not matching, but we want to see the whole report. We want to see how they got there, because the report will show us how they conducted this. We'll actually be able to see that bullet fragment. How big is, I don't know. We know nothing. And then Erica's team comes in, the state comes in, they're like, it doesn't matter. We're not even going to bring up the ATF thing. So you have our word. So we're good. They're like, well, first of all, why aren't you bringing that up? And it's not about whether you're good. It's about whether we're good, because that's pretty exculpatory for us. If, the gun does not fit, you must acquit. This is the purpose of a preliminary hearing, is to get a judge to just unilaterally dismiss something as an option. So what's up with that? Why are you not giving it? They're like, oh, because we're going to do some other testing down the line. Here's where it gets crucial. Pay attention. Look alive. Okay. It goes on and it says, in order to make this determination, it is necessary for the defense and its firearm expert to review the ATF case file and the protocols relating to this examination, which have not yet been provided. The state has also indicated that the FBI is in the process of conducting a second comparative bullet analysis, as well as a bullet lead analysis. that these analyses are not yet complete. Okay, pay attention, Tyler Robinson's defense team. I'm about to help you out in a big way.
This is so elementary. When she said that, I knew exactly what she was talking about. You see, friends, there are a lot of people out there that don't understand that when a state wants to prove a case, they do all kind of wicked stuff so that people don't have the evidence they need in the time that they need. So what we want to do is pay close attention to the tricks that are being played by the prosecuting team, because these are unnecessary. They know they don't have a damn thing. All they have is just ideas. There's truly not even the text messages. They don't want to give them the metadata to say how they came up with pulling that off of his phone, servers, or whatever. So we know what's going on here. We know. But this story, as soon as I heard that, I was like, oh, I know what they're using. And this is it.
They told you that, you conferred. They said, okay, don't worry. We got it. We got this. We're going to do a secondary thing with the feds. And like me, I'm nosy. I'm like, wait, what do you mean? The ATF is alcohol, tobacco, and firearms. That's the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms. If they couldn't do it, what extra power does the FBI have to do it? If the firearm people can't do it, why is this going to the FBI? So I said, what is a comparative bullet lead analysis? What is that? I need to know things. I like to learn. And lo and behold, we find out that the CBLA, the compositional analysis, is a discontinued forensic technique that analyzed trace elements, copper, arsenic, in lead to link crime scene bullets to suspects. It was primarily used by the FBI from the 1980s until 2004, but it was then abandoned in 2005 due to flawed scientific, statistical, and interpretive validity. Wait.
There you have it. Now you can watch this episode at Candace on, but she goes to show, news reports of how the FBI quietly stopped using this technique, primarily because they were inconclusive and they were lying. The manufacturers and the scientists both said, yeah, we're not going to testify that that's conclusive. So that's why they had to stop it. But they used it for years. And a lot of people in the news clip that she has, a lot of people were sent to prison behind this false testing that was done to convict people. So you can watch that full story at Candace.